Thank you, Dot, for your willingness to come the distance today and share some of your memories about your time at Plymouth State in preparation for the 150th birthday that we have coming up in 2021. My first question to you is, what is your full name?
Dorothy Diehl, or Dot Diehl.
What year did you come to Plymouth?
I came in 1972.
And at that time, was it PTC, Plymouth Teachers College?
It was Plymouth State College, PSC.
And I always ask this question and you can refuse. What was your first year salary?
And I can't remember what it was, but it was very low, comparatively speaking anyway, because the union leader used to publish the salaries and the salary scale for Plymouth State College. And so in the scale, the very bottom of the scale was my salary. But I didn't have my master's completed, and I came in hired to take the place of a woman who was leaving just right after the semester was beginning in the fall. And so, you know, I could understand that was the salary that I was going to be earning. But it wasn't very much.
Where did you get your master's?
Got my master's through UNH. So I got that, completed that after I was teaching here.
And your terminal degree?
And my terminal degree is from University of Illinois.
How many years were you employed at Plymouth?
72 to 31.
31 years. And what capacity were you hired?
I was hired as an instructor in health and physical education.
And that's what its title, the department's title name was? It has morphed so many times.
Yes, it was health and physical education. Yes, it was. Because I remember Dayton Spalding was our health teacher.
Okay. What responsibilities came with your position as an instructor? And we'd also like to talk about you were a coach. So let's take the faculty instructor role first. What were some of your responsibilities? What did you teach?
I took up the schedule of the woman who had left. She had put in about a month or so, and so her schedule was already made and going. So I had that, and I wasn't particularly well prepared for it. But she taught adapted PE, and she taught, I remember, another thing I wasn't prepared for was camping. I had not done camping in my life. And archery. I remember Janet giving me lessons in archery so I could teach the archery activity class. And she, the woman who left had just finished the coaching the field hockey season. So I came in just as the field hockey season was finished and picked up her schedule through the fall and then on into the spring.
So you were not the coach of field hockey until the second year?
That's right. 1973 was my first coaching year.
And did you recruit at that time?
No, recruiting was not a part of the picture. You know, even, I guess there was some perhaps in football, maybe, but recruiting was just not something that you did or had time for, and particularly it was not the case for women's sports.
What contact, if any, did you have outside of your coaching role and your teaching role with the students?
Actually, very little up here on campus because we were so busy with the coaching and teaching in our physical education in our building down across the river. So I didn't have a lot of contact with students on campus at that time, and of course I lived a half hour away, so I didn't live in town.
My assumption is at that time that you taught mostly females.
Yes. No, that's not correct. Janet Nell had previous to me, but the classes were mixed. They were mixed, except for things like field hockey, basketball, those where there was a women's sport and was the activity. But all the other ones, the hiking, the skiing, those were all mixed. and the theory classes were all mixed as well.
What were the first few years like when you were at Plymouth? And I'm going to make the assumption that you're a mom, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So what was it like coming here and having young children?
Oh, it was busy, and it was tough. They were 3.5, going on 4. They're twins, and I had to find a babysitter for the full day because I would never get home until at least 4 o'clock. And when I was coaching, it was much later than that. And it was very difficult because it was up in the morning and away I'd go. And of course, the babysitter had to be there early because they were not in school. They were not in a nursery school. And I can remember coming home from teaching, probably 4:30, and there were the 2 little guys the babysitter had left, and my son and daughter were there just popping up and down, and John says, "Okay, Mommy, what are we going to do today?" And I'm like, oh no. My day was starting all over again. And of course then there was all the duties of dinner and bathes and into bed, and the times that they were sick. And I remember that my son often got the croup, as we called it, and so up late at night. This is a funny story. I can remember being so tired, getting little kids get sick, run temperatures, and so I have him downstairs, and I'm taking his temperature every hour or so, and I take his temperature, of course this is rectally, and I pull it out, and I put the thermometer in backwards. So anyway, there was always the worries of the kids, and missing the special Halloween time, because Halloween is such a big deal, and they'd have their party and their parade at school, and they all had uniforms, dressed up, and I had to miss that. I remember I was down at Northeastern on Halloween night with the field hockey team playing at Northeastern, and very sad that I couldn't be home with the kids because it was such a special time.
So during season, coaching field hockey, your day began when and finished when?
It began usually with an 8 o'clock usually an 8 o'clock class, and then the classes were completed somewhere around 3 or 3:30, and then the practice started at 3:30, and that would go till at least 5:30. So it was very busy. There was very little time for a break. Lunch was often skipped. I can remember actually, after the practice was over, field hockey practice, I was so hungry, and there was my sandwich, and I took it out and took it into the locker room, and I was eating my sandwich while I was showering. It was such a tight schedule, and I was so tired.
During the decades that you were at Plymouth, how did the population, can you remember, my goodness, we have more and more students every year, how did the population change from the early 70s to when you left?
Oh, it kept growing and growing and growing. And in our major, it just really grew. We became and maintained, we were the second largest department. Business department was the largest, and then it was physical education. And that was physical education majors. That was very, very growing, very busy.
When you got the offer to come to Plymouth, what was it about the offer that you decided to say, I'm going to accept this?
Well, I was, Janet Nell had suggested my name, as had Harriet Forkey, had suggested my name to the dean. It was then Dean Foley. And they needed to find someone quickly because the other woman needed to leave as soon as possible. And so they contacted me, and I remember my interview with Dean Foley, well, first with Doug Weisman, the department chair, and knowing that I was going to be teaching field hockey or coaching it the following year, that was an important part of the job. But it was going to be a challenge. It was going to be many things that I hadn't taught before, and of course it was going to take up a great deal of time. I didn't realize how much.
After you arrived, though, what was it about the college or the town, college first, town second, that you said to yourself, this was the right decision for me?
It was the department members. They were very good. They were very helpful. Janet Nell had her office right next to me, and she was so helpful. And we had such good times and many good laughs together. So we became very good friends. But also, there weren't many women in the department. Carol Spencer, she was then, and Joanne Peterson, and Janet and myself. And then the remainder of the department were men, and they were all very helpful. It was a fun department. I enjoyed them, and they made me feel welcome.
How about the town? You lived in another town. You have to travel 30 minutes to get here. Did you have opportunities to walk the main street?
No, not really. We were off campus down there, and I'd come in off 93 and into the physical education center and teach and coach and be on my way home again. So the only things that in later years, not just my first years, would bring me up to campus would be many committee meetings. And I remember the bridge, the old bridge, and walking across the bridge, and that was a green rickety bridge, and it always got splashed as the cars went past. There's no way you could walk up through there and not get covered with mud and water as I'd come up from my faculty meeting, but for my committee meetings in particular. But that's what brought me up to the campus, but not really into the town.
I'm trying to remember the early 70s, and I'm going to ask a question about your attire. When you were teaching a theory course, can you recall if you had to were you wearing a skirt or a dress, because slacks were not totally accepted at that time?
That's right. We taught in tunics, and that's what women wore in physical education for years. We had a white blouse, and then the tunic was a square-necked. Probably came down to middle of your thighs, not certainly not above your knees, but not to the ankles either. That's what we taught in. If we taught gymnastics, we were in gymnastics tights, and as the gymnast would be. And then, yes, for the first years, yes, I was conscious of teaching in skirts. But then, and I think partly because it was physical education, we would be in warm-up suits or pants where it became a little more acceptable.
That's great. Was there someone that was influential during your first few years at Plymouth and maybe later on as well?
Janet Nell was definitely very influential, very helpful. And we discovered that we had graduated from the same college in Pennsylvania, and we could share our Pennsylvania stories. And she was very helpful and influential. And then there was Sally Boland, who first I just saw, I would hear her speaking in faculty meeting, and I saw how strong she was, and then I got to know her much better, and we worked together a lot in women's studies, and she was just very helpful to me. And of course then there was Theo Calico, and as dean, she was very supportive of the female faculty members. And then others, Henry Vidum. I think he was influential for many, many people, but a wonderful man, and he spoke so well, and he was so knowledgeable. I served on various committees with him, and I always felt comfortable with him. I always respected him very much, but really appreciated his working with me and listening to me as well. And Ed Wixon. He too was a faculty member who spoke strongly and you listened to what he had to say. But then when he was dean and I was department chair, he was very helpful. He really came to understand the work of the department and the teaching loads of the faculty, and he was very supportive. And I had a lot of help from him and a lot of respect for him.
I have to talk about Henry Bidham just for a second because his voice commanded. You listened to his voice, whether or not he was telling stories close to Christmas time. That's what people did.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Or he was part of his background with Shakespearean theater. It was a very unique voice.
It was.
Yes.
Deep and so projected. And he always sat in the back of the auditorium in faculty meetings, which is where I first met him and was so impressed just listening. He would be in the back and he'd stand up and project forward and always had strong points to make, and everyone listened. He was a delight to know and to work with.
If we think about the changes that took place, these are physical changes, what might they have been from when you came to when you left on this campus? Initially, we would not have had the other campus, the Holderness side, but what other changes took place that you can recall?
Well, when I came, we were in the Physical Education Center. So I didn't begin teaching in the Silver Auditorium, which is where physical education was taught. And I remember Janet telling me about teaching there. And the bowling alley in the basement of Rounce. Anyway, so when I came, we had been about 3 years into the Physical Education Center. And it was really special. And they were so happy with it, very proud of it.
When you were here, we had Summer Street, or was it called School Street? And that was still had traffic on it.
Yes.
And then they shut it down.
And then they shut it down, yes.
Were you part of that? You can remember
I remember that, just vaguely, because I remember sometimes, a few times I would drive up to campus, and I never quite knew where I was going, because suddenly things had stopped and were changed, and Summer Street and School Street it was different. And the new dorms were built, the smaller dorms for student housing, and they were new then. And yes, you had, I guess, 1 or 2 floors, and it was called the new student housing.
In a 10-year period at Plymouth State, we had 11 buildings either go up or were modified. Lamson was changed.
Oh, yes.
Upgraded.
And Boyd.
You're there, and you're right. You had the married student dorms, and you would have had Grafton go up. There were so many buildings.
That's
right.
right.
The increase of all the students that you were receiving.
That's right.
It was the most growth we had physically on this campus.
Yes.
Yes, it
That's
was
right.
amazing. If we think about your decades again on this campus, what do you feel has been your major contribution? And I know that's difficult for a lot of people to talk about, but you had a role as chair of the department, professor in the department, you were a coach, and yet you held positions on campus as well. Could you speak to those?
Yes, I became more and more involved in the committee work on campus, thus my walking back and forth across the bridge. And then I was faculty speaker for 2 years. And also in that time, we were changing, the faculty was looking to change its structure. It didn't want to have just a faculty meeting, and that was our only kind of access to administration. And so we created various committees to come up with ideas, and I worked with Bob McDermott, and we created this, came up with this idea for a large committee that would be overseeing the other committees, but still with the same faculty, full faculty representation and faculty meetings, because I believed strongly that the faculty should continue to be individually involved, not have a representative of theirs going to the faculty meeting. So anyway, we came up with that, and we created what was called a working council. And it was a large council made up of all the faculty members, no, of elected faculty members, excuse me. And they oversaw, that working council oversaw all the other committees to make sure that they were doing their work, that they had to learn what they were doing, were they active, were they meeting. And we revised the faculty handbook completely, and really became quite involved in all aspects. I think by getting all of our different committees with their assignments more active and more involved, more and more people were a part of the workings of the college. And the curriculum was, of course, completely owned by the faculty, I'm going to say, and they worked very hard at it. And I remember general education was such a big, important thing to revise. Virginia Garlick put in so many hours and worked so hard to get our faculty to finally pass a revised general education program, because we believe that the curriculum for every student should carry a solid general education, as well as having our specialties, because each department would get caught up in what they specialized in. And so the curriculum committee and the long-range planning committees, I remember us having that as well, being very much a part of where was the college headed and what did we think we should be doing and how should we keep revising our curriculum. We were very involved. And the administration, as we went from one president to another one, were very accepting of that. And maybe it was because we had gotten this so well established that as the president would come in, she or he knew they were going to be becoming quite involved with the faculty and working closely with the faculty. Always, of course, there was the president and the vice president, or the dean, I should say, were always at the faculty meetings and always spoke. Yes, they were just all, we felt that we were part of a working family.
During your time, you have received some acknowledgments, awards that represented maybe the complete package of what you did, your several roles that you held on campus.
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk about a few of those?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yes. Coaching was a big part of my assignment in the fall, coaching field hockey. And this is an award that was established. It's called the Dorothy Dot Diehl Award, and it was awarded to a female athlete, not so much for outstanding a performance as for her character and her contributions to the program of athletics and to the college. And that was a very nice award established in my name, and I felt very good about that.
And that award is still given?
Yes, it continues to be awarded annually, yes. The other little trinket I have here is little black box. Says it's for the Officials Hall of Fame. Well, I umpired or officiated field hockey while I was coaching somewhat on the weekends. I did, and then throughout the state and throughout New England college level as well. And I was given this award with the whistle inside to recognize me as a member of the Officials Hall of Fame for New Hampshire. I spent many years officiating. It certainly contributed to my coaching, and then I continued it afterwards as well. But it involved me a lot in the state. I officiated lots of high schools, and then many, many years I would officiate the field hockey finals, the tournament for New Hampshire. And I also officiated in Vermont, Massachusetts, a lot in Massachusetts. In the colleges, I did a lot of traveling. That was usually, well, after the day was over, getting home late at night, or officiating, of course, on Saturdays. This was when I was no longer coaching, but I had also done the high school officiating. That just fitted in the afternoons afterwards, and sometimes on weekends. And then also an award that I received that I value very much is the Theo Calico Award. This was established to recognize women on campus and their contributions to the campus. And this says, for being a good listener and advisor to your faculty, peers, and students, for your leadership in the creation of the Women's Studies courses and of the Women's Studies Council, and your dedication in serving, I'm sorry, I can hardly read it, achieve goals of equity, both in athletics and in physical education, and for working tirelessly to involve the positions, to increase the positions of women at Plymouth State College. So this was a special one.
When you arrived at Plymouth, were there many women in your department as well as on campus?
There were in our department, as I had mentioned, I think 4 of us. I think there were around 10 men. We had a lot of faculty because we kept growing and growing, and as we hired, we kept hiring more men as well. So that was quite lopsided. But on campus, we had Mary Lou Hinman and I taught. Now this would have been probably in the 60s, early 70s. We initiated a course on women, maybe the history of women, and in it was a very well attended course, young men and women, and we talked about the roles of women, and we tried to apply it also to Plymouth State. And I remember at the time pointing out to them that we had full professors, and that of our full professors we had 1 female full professor, 1. And then I also remember a young man who was a senior raised his hand and said that in his 4 years here at Plymouth, he had had 1 class taught by a female, 1 class in his 4 years. It was lopsided, and it was difficult to slowly get the message through that we needed more women. We needed more women, and we needed to hear more women's voices, and to have things much more equitable within our sports program. That was quite lopsided. And when I went to request uniforms, because in field hockey the women wore the uniform that they wore for classes, which was a tunic, kind of like a jumper, and that's what they wore for their classes, unless it was gymnastics, and then they had shorts, I think, that they wore, and a sweater. But that's what they wore. And so then when they went onto the field for field hockey or on the basketball court, they wore their physical education outfit. It was difficult playing basketball in these tunics. I'm sure it was. But I went to our department chair and tried to make the case, and it took quite a long time for us to have a uniform. And then years later to have, that was to have a skirt and shirt that said Plymouth State and field hockey and so forth. But then many more years before we could get a warm-up suit. That was very difficult to do. And at the time that we had them, bell bottoms was the style. So the pants had a zipper No, they didn't. They were bell-bottom pants, and we just stuck our legs in, and we had a green jacket. So we thought we were really sharp in our green outfit. Well, we were. But as the years went on, and bell-bottoms went by the wayside, my assistant coach, Ellen Harris, took them, and every one of the pants she re-sewed, cut the part of the bell bottom out, and put in zippers so that we were, again, not embarrassed in our suits. But those are the only warm-up suits that we ever had in all my years at Plymouth. And they were shared with the lacrosse team. So we had to be very careful to have them clean, and then everyone turning them in had to check them off. Nobody kept any part of their that uniform, and then they would use them in lacrosse.
I'm silent because I'm shocked. I'm shocked. I asked this question, what changes, if any, have we learned from our past that might support those people working at Plymouth today? So if you had an orientation, they've asked you as a professor to talk to the new folks coming through the door, be they administrators, faculty, maintenance, OS operating staff folks, what might you share with them?
Oh, I would say to them, of course, when you come in as a faculty member, you're so into what you're going to be teaching, and that's where your focus is. But I would say to them, get involved. And to the new people in maintenance and in staff, I would say, get involved. But not just leaving it there, but rather particularly pressing with the young new faculty members. Get in touch, be in touch with your peers in other departments. Hopefully you would have a faculty meeting, or if you didn't, try to initiate, have a faculty meeting that people would be required to come to monthly. And you would meet and converse, or some kind of a gathering. But no, not just a gathering, it would be one where you would have work to do, where you would work on your curriculum, not just yours, but throughout the college curriculum, and understanding, at least as well as you could, the curriculums and life of the other majors on campus, what the students were doing, and also understanding the life of the athletes. Now they're students, and they're students first, but becoming involved in going to see and learn and ask about the athletic programs, and consequently being much more together, learning to know one another and recognizing faces and then names, and then working on committees, creating committees where you felt things need to be worked out, and meeting with the administration in faculty meetings and in other committee meetings, so that there was a name recognition also, and with the staff, the PAT staff. It's really important that the more you recognize faces, the more you learn names and put them to faces and then work together, the more a community is developed and a family.
I'm asking you now, you've been out of the Plymouth area, your position for
since
almost
03, so yeah,
that
16
many years,
years.
15, 16 years.
Oh my.
What do you miss? Is there something that you miss?
I miss, first come to mind, I miss the camaraderie of faculty members, good friends, just working together to accomplish things, and knowing that we made things happen, that we knew things that were needed to be done. Yes, I missed that. I was delighted with the free day, so to speak, because by that time my children are off and away in college and so forth, and it seemed like, I remember driving to play tennis one morning at an indoor tennis court and feeling so strange, because I should have been, it was about 8 o'clock in the morning, and I should have been off to Plymouth. I should be off teaching. It seemed like I was on vacation. But the other things that I really missed, I missed the students. Now, I stayed involved with students in the way that through officiating, because I continued to umpire field hockey for quite some time after that. So I continued to see the young faces and hear them and remember all that. I think I missed that, and I did miss the academics as well. I missed the work in exercise science, which I really got involved in, and I wasn't doing that anymore. So that was something special too.
Our time is coming to a close. Is there something that we've missed? A story, a memory, a thought that you'd like to share with the audience?
Shall I share my funny story? I remember thinking about so many funny things, especially in the classroom, but in coaching as well, because you're so working so hard and so close with the students. So many funny things happen, and they get to know you well, and you get to know them well. But one year we had qualified for the NCAA finals, and that was exciting. We had to travel to New York, down to Long Island. Well, we traveled in our great big bus with Chuck as our driver. Now, we had Chuck Ledger as our bus driver, and he took care of us, because he drove us to all of our games, and he would be involved. He'd park the bus so he could watch the game and then talk about it after the game was over, and things we did, or things that were great, or things we didn't do. But he drove us down there, and I remember our students, very few of them had been to New York City, and they're just jumping out the window out on Long Island and can't believe what they're seeing. But anyway, we were going to be playing soon in the tournament, and we'd gone to a restaurant for breakfast, I believe. And we came out and piled on the bus, and we're ready to, off we go. The bus wouldn't start. It really wouldn't start. We're like here out in Long Island somewhere. So we all hopped out of the bus, and all the players, and we pushed it so that Chuck could jump start the bus. And it worked. It's a great big bus, and here we are pushing it across this big parking lot, down over a little hill, and off we go, and it starts. Oh my goodness, that was just it was so funny. We couldn't believe we did it, because we were stranded in New York. We didn't know anything. And there went our Chuck, our little old jalopy. Off we went. What an experience.
I'm just thinking of some of those students, and if that memory has been rekindled every once in a while.
Oh, yes. When we get together for homecoming, we have many field hockey players come back, and that's one of the big things. Remember Chuck in the bus and pushing the bus.
Chuck in the bus. Well, we'll say thank you for joining us again, willing to come the distance to share your memories of your time at Plymouth from many different viewpoints, as a professor, as a coach, as an authority, especially in the area of women and the role that they should be playing then compared to what we have today. Thank you for that too.